Good morning. I appreciate everyone coming out today. My name is Margaret Vaughn, V-A-U-G-H-N. I am the Government Affairs Director of the Illinois Funeral Directors Association. And we've been part of a coalition for the past 2 years that have been working feverishly together to try to find a resolution to an issue that has affected thousands of elderly in nursing homes on Medicaid, as well as their loved ones. We're working on the passage of House Bill 4979. In essence, what it does is it corrects a law that has forced thousands of people on Medicaid and nursing homes to cash in their life insurance policies, their whole life insurance policies, prematurely for pennies on the dollar. And the portion of those life insurance policy that was supposed to be exempted and used to cover their funeral and burial cost just went to waste, and they were left with less than $1,000 or two to spend on their final funeral and burial cost, which will barely cover a basic cremation. In some cases, they would be forced to get the money from the Indigent Burial Fund, which it makes absolutely no sense that the taxpayers would have to cover their funeral costs when, in fact, they had private insurance that the state prohibited them from using. So, although the whole purpose of small whole life insurance policies is to ensure that your funeral and burial costs are covered and your family wouldn't have to worry about that, how this happened is back in 2012 when the Medicaid reform legislation passed in Illinois, when Illinois adopted what was known as the SMART Act. Part of the federal provisions which allow this were accidentally left out. This had been the practice prior to the adoption of the SMART Act for decades in Illinois, as is the practice in all the other states. This was just an oversight, an unintentional oversight. House Bill 4979 corrects this oversight and brings Illinois law more in line with federal guidelines, as well as making it consistent with the laws in the other states. I'd like to thank the person that really got the ball rolling for us 2 years ago, Assistant Majority Leader Natalie Manley. She worked tirelessly on this issue with all the various state agencies. She had weekly stakeholder meetings in her office. And I know it sounds, as I'm presenting it today, like an easy fix, but when we first started this ball rolling, everyone knew there was a problem. We weren't sure exactly what the solution was. And all the different agencies that were in us, the Department of Insurance, the Controller's Office, which oversees the Funeral or Burial Funds Act, Health and Family Services, Human Services. So though it sounds like an easy fix, all these acts had to be amended to make it work properly, and we finally got to that point. Next, I'd like to introduce the Vice President of the Illinois Funeral Directors Association, Matt Baskerville of Reeves and Baskerville Funeral Homes.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Most of the time, these insurance policies that are in question are of relatively small value, $8,000 to $10,000, and the poor elderly people that have paid these policies in full are the ones that have been denied the right to use them as a death benefit at their time of death. Not only would it benefit the individuals who have these policies that they've paid on, some of them their entire lives, some of these policies their employers have paid, but it would also benefit taxpayers. Any additional monies over and above these insurance policies that are not utilized for funeral expenses at end of life would go back to the state. So it's really a win-win situation. And we certainly appreciate all the work that the stakeholders have placed in to put this House bill forth.
And next, I'd like to bring up our hero in the Senate, who has fought feverishly also to put this before the Senate, Senator John Connor.
Thank you very much for that very warm introduction, Margaret. And I would like to extend my thanks as well to Leader Manley for championing this issue for the last couple of years, and say my thank yous as well to the stakeholders who Margaret has been working with over the last 2 years, AARP, the Office of the Illinois Comptroller, obviously the Illinois Funeral Directors Association, Matt just spoke, the Illinois Coroners and Medical Examiners Association, and the Illinois chapter of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. So as with any good legislation, this has been the product of a lot of compromise and negotiation. And so I'm privileged to be able to carry this on the Senate side on behalf of these stakeholders to solve this problem. And, you know, if you just put yourself into the position of family members, you lose a loved one, you then find out that the insurance that you thought was going to provide to pay for the funeral and the burial expenses for that loved one doesn't exist. So now as a family, particularly if you're of limited means or indigent, now you're scrambling to try to get a payday loan or use some other method in order to pay for this funeral that you thought was going to be taken care of. And there's also the component to this that oftentimes cremation is the only affordable option for the family members. And in some cases, a religious preference would be not for cremation. But when you have no other options financially, that's going to be the solution that presents itself. So this is going to help those families that find themselves in this situation so that they don't discover a cruel surprise, namely that their loved one, in addition to being gone, doesn't have any means in order to help defray the funeral and burial expenses. So I'm proud to carry this and look forward to moving it through session. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you. I think you hit the nose on the head, Senator, when you said cruel. Although it was no one's intention for this to happen, it was just an oversight, but the result has been cruel to the state's most vulnerable, the elderly in nursing homes on Medicaid, that it's often overlooked, and we're all here to advocate for them today and make sure they have a voice in their families at their most desperate time of need. Next, I would like to introduce a man who has also lived through this, unfortunately, Ed Pierce from Marshall, Illinois, Pierce Funeral Home, and he has experienced this way too many times firsthand.
Okay, I want to thank you very much. I thought this day would never come. I really, truly did. And I'd like to express my heartfelt appreciation to all the legislators working on this important law that about to pass. I have experienced firsthand over the last 10 years the devastating impact, the flaw in the current Medicaid law that has cost hundreds of my families in our area great distress. I want to give an example of this. A few months ago, I had a lady come to me. Her husband had to be placed in a nursing facility in our community, and he was going to have to receive benefits from the Illinois Department of Public Aid. To back up a little bit, this man and his wife, they lived on $1,050 a month that they received from Social Security. And for him to be eligible for Medicaid, they had about 3 or 4 small life insurance policies between the two of them. We had to cash those policies in, or his in, then, because his were smaller. And then we had to cash her policy in so they could purchase a monument. And she was able to get keep the rest of the money then for herself, but it wasn't going to go very far on $1,050 a month of their combined income. Shortly thereafter, because of his illness, he was transferred to a nursing facility in Terre Haute, Indiana, a adjoining community of ours. By Indiana law, or the other law, they would have been able to keep that life insurance, and none of it would have been cashed in. And when she sat in our office and I explained that we had to cash this in, she sat there and she cried. She said, we'd spent all these years paying on these policies so we could have a decent burial. It wasn't going to be anything elaborate, but it was just going to be decent. And this has happened so many times in the past with families. I also had the situation where families had irrevocably assigned life insurance policies to us, and everything was okay with it. Later on, I'd be contacted by the Illinois Department of Human Services that those policies had to be cashed in. And they might have had them irrevocably assigned to the funeral home for maybe 10 or 15 years. And that was devastating for me to have to call those people and tell them your insurance is no good anymore. And you're going to have to cash a $10,000 policy in and maybe get $1,800. And like I said, I am so thankful that people have finally listened to this situation, and I hope it can be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank the other legislators that are here joining us today. Senator Dale Fowler from Southern Illinois, Representative Joyce Mason from up in Gurnee, Senator Jason Plummer from Edwardsville. He's funeral directors in his family. He knows all too well this situation. Senator Craig Wilcox from up north, McHenry County, and Senator Jill Tracy, who also has a history of the funeral profession in her family, so she understands firsthand as well the devastating impact the current law has had on everyone. So in conclusion, we'd just like to thank the proponents. We'd just like to thank all the stakeholders, all the state agencies, especially the Department of Insurance, the Comptroller's Office, the Department of Health and Family Services, who worked together with us to finally find a remedy to this situation in the form of Senate Amendment 1 to House Bill 4979. It's been assigned to the Senate Insurance Committee, and we hope to get it through the legislature this week so no more families and their loved ones have to suffer.